Hey, how are you? So, I promised that I would continue this conversation a little bit about introverted Black women. And this is part 3 of that series, and it's called Quiet Power. What is quiet power? So, I got all kinds of comments. I was so surprised. So, I'm going to start by saying I'm just a mom, a teacher, an artist, a writer, yeah, and a grandma. And I'm not an expert. I'm just going on a journey. But again, our topic here is defining quiet power. So there are people that you have heard of, people who live today, people who are historical or from mythology, who exemplify quiet power. And when you think of an introverted woman, a reserved woman, what do you think of? Do you think of someone who is insular and who keeps to themselves? Do you think of someone who is quiet? Do you think of someone who is elegant and reserved and all of that? So what's your impression of a reserved woman, an introverted woman? So let's go to popular culture and look at definitions of quiet power. Okay, in those old movies, those old like cowboy movies and all of that, who was it you really needed to be worried about? Was it that loud talking cowboy, whatever, or was it that really quiet one who watched everything with the gun on his hip? And for those of you who liked karate movies and all of that, didn't you have to be careful of that like quiet guy in the corner? Remember? Anybody, was it, okay, anyone remember that movie? It was with Toshiro Mifune. Seven Samurai, I think. Remember when he was like sitting at the table eating his food and like the bandits or whoever they were, the bad guys were looking through the window at him, trying to size him up, right? He didn't say a word. He just continued to eat. And he's using his chopsticks, his hashi, and all of a sudden this fly comes by and he just takes his chopsticks and boom, that fast grabs the fly, captures it, right? And all the bad guys go and they go run away, right? Because they know without one word being said, without him being all loud and everything, that one movement showed his skill and said everything it needed to say, meaning you better not mess with him, right? Okay. So how do you interpret that in your own life? If you are an introvert and you do have power, or you're discovering your power and people are underestimating you. Well, there are a couple of things you need to do. I made part 2 about speaking up, but I'm not saying you need to change yourself in order to display that quiet power or to get people to respect you. You do sometimes have to worry about other people respecting your space, your privacy, and all of that. We don't work in a vacuum. People's attitudes can affect your paycheck, affect your money, your income, your health, your freedom, your life. So sometimes, even if you don't want to deal with people, they need to learn a lesson about respecting you. How do you do that? So I'm moving a little bit to the side so I can use this space to illustrate some things. What is quiet power? What is holding your power versus being just quiet? Introversion we'll talk about in, I think, part 5 or part 6, right? Whether or not you're actually an introvert, and we'll talk about some ways you can tell or find out. Some of us are old enough that we know ourselves well enough to know, yes, we are introverted, or we just like to be to ourselves for one reason or the other. That's another video. This video is all about quiet power. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is how there are two types of quiet power that I'm actually addressing right now. One is that reserved kind of power where the person that person has a lot of power, but it is reserved and you cannot tell from first glance whether or not that person is powerful. And that second kind of power is a power that a person has that is underestimated, whether it's because other people look at that person or you and underestimate you because you're very quiet and maybe shy or unassuming, meaning you don't dress really loudly or whatever it is, or maybe your body is smaller and they may think that you're meek or this or that and just don't know your power and make assumptions. Some people have loads of power. They have come into themselves. They have been through things and know how to wield that power and know when to pull it out and when to keep it in. Some people haven't discovered their power yet, and others just assume they don't have it, but that's a bad assumption for them to make. So first, it may be important for you to identify which one are you. Are you actually not an introvert? You just know when to hold your power and to keep it to yourself and pull it out when you need to. And that's one kind of power. In Japanese, there's a saying, it's no arutaka wa tsune o kakusu. And that means the hawk or the falcon that has the claws hides their claws, meaning they keep their power to themselves until they need to use it. We have other sayings that are very similar. There's Winston Churchill's quote that people say is often misquoted, go look it up, but what's it? Walk softly and carry a big stick. It's that sort of power, meaning it's not a good idea to let everyone know really all of your capabilities. And that kind of power is the kind of power that people brought up in comments a lot. The second kind of power that people have, that quiet power that is unassuming, people don't know you have it. People will test you and try you because they think you don't have any power, but either you just haven't gotten the skills yet to use that power, don't want to use that power, or you still don't know how to use that power, or that you even have that power. So that's the second kind of quiet power that's there. And I'm here to tell you, everyone has power of one kind or another. Okay. I think it's important to let people know that in all cultures around the world, there are sayings around this, around the importance of knowing how to hold your power, of knowing which situations to talk and which not to. There are a couple of them. Let me just look at my notes really quickly. So, for example, what is it? There's an African saying, much silence makes a powerful noise. Much silence makes a powerful noise. It reminds me of another saying which is connected. It's also a saying from Asia. And what's the sound of one hand clapping? Okay, so you may want to look some of these up. If you want me to go deeper into some of these, I always loved idioms and sayings. Yes, if you can't tell by this channel, I'm a little nerd, and love it. But anyway, other sayings, let me see. Better to be silent and thought a fool than remove all doubts. That means as soon as you open your mouth, you let people know who you are. Now, I want to take it down a little bit and talk, well, I don't know if it's down, but talk a little bit about some assumptions people are making about women and being quiet and reserved, and that showing class and all of that. So let's talk about this. In all cultures too, there's often a beauty in being quiet and reserved and observant. That's been thousands and thousands of years in all cultures. Black culture does not get excluded. We're all human beings. So in all cultures, there's been a beauty to being quiet and reserved, but there's also been lots of lively culture around being extroverted as well. And there's a beauty there. There's a vivaciousness and life infused in that as well. So the commentary that would pop up in the first video and that I was seeing in other videos, and I watched a couple. I don't have a lot of time to watch loads and loads. It sounds so weird being on YouTube, but I have a day job and I'm busy as a mom and grandmom and all of that, and artist and all that, right? But the undertone and the reason why it has become something that we're talking about in terms of Black women is that the stereotype in the United States is that Black women are loud, and almost all of us are supposed to be extroverted, or we're supposed to be kind of performers all the time. It's an assumption created over not just decades, hundreds of years, without going deep into it, okay? A lot of it has been that so-called misinformation. A lot of it has been supported and buttressed by the behavior of women who sometimes have had to get loud just to survive, assert themselves, and to combat invisibility. So some of us are introverted, some of us are extroverted. None of us fits in a perfect box. I'll talk more about that when I go into the video that's talking about whether, or how to tell whether you are actually an introvert or not, okay? I thought it was also important to note that for myself, I was raised around a lot of older women and in the southern part of the United States. So I'm a southern girl, okay? Daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter, great-great-granddaughter of HBCU educated teachers, community leaders, that sort of thing. And then when I went away to college, I traveled around the world and spent time around people from many different cultures. So I'm sure a lot of that has influenced me in the way that I act, behave, see things, see a wider perspective, and I am pretty good at seeing different sides of one topic. So I thought that was also important to tell you, to give you some context from which I come, okay? So one of my favorite sayings is, "Still waters run deep." Some of you may remember that song, but still waters run deep. Still waters as in, a pond or a lake that is very quiet on the surface, but down below it goes to the depths, and there's so much going on there. And as it seems, still waters run deep just pretty much means that in that quiet person there might be lots going on. It could be positive, it could be negative. That person could have all kinds of exciting things that you can discover. That also could mean that very quiet person has some negative things going on too. But still waters run deep, and I love that one. It's also important to recognize that it's very dangerous for you to underestimate someone just because they are quiet. You could be overlooking a wealth of knowledge, experience, skill, insight. You also could be, if you are taking advantage of that person, putting yourself in danger because you don't know what is below that surface quiet and sense of reserve. So, fair warning. Well, one way you do that is, as I talked about in part 2, you have to speak up sometimes, and you have to maybe even go to YouTube University and watch videos on assertiveness or holding your, making people respect your place, okay? You might need to increase your skill that way, right? Sometimes you're going to need to continue to finish your sentence. Sometimes you may need to continue to finish the next couple of sentences that you intended to say, because some people automatically will assume that you're going to stop and let them talk, and they're not showing you respect that way. Sometimes you might even have to take a breath and say, oh, if you are online, especially this, oh, is my microphone working? Because so-and-so keeps interrupting me. Okay. I'm going to say that sometimes the rougher language is going to have to come out. I know Michelle Obama said, when they go low, you go high, and it's true, but some of those words are going to have to come out here and there. These simple phrases may help a little bit. Let me finish what I was saying. Or, I'm going to finish what I was saying. Excuse me, that works sometimes. Just excuse me, just like that. Keep talking, and then allow them to speak. Some people will try to shout you down or bully you, and you don't have to be called out of your name in order to handle that. You just let them know that you're not going to take it. Say, don't yell at me. You don't need to raise your voice, and continue to maintain your power. Some people you don't need to deal with. And those people might even be in your family. If there's a way for you to just walk away, do that. So I know it gets a little more complicated when the one not respecting your quiet power, or the one not respecting your lack of it, is bullying you, or is someone you're in a relationship with, and you have to deal with that. So there are people who've been through that. There are resources that you can find. There are others who will talk more on that subject, but you need to get some help with that. Here's my list of people who you may know who exemplify, again, quiet power. It's my list, my own personal list. You can add to it. You can say, how is that person exemplifying quiet power? All of that. Would love to hear you. So go ahead. But here you go. Here's my list. I have about 2 more short videos that I'm planning, unless you have comments that I need to touch on a couple of other things. And one is actually deciding, are you really an introvert or not? And what that definition is. And the second one is pretty much on how much you actually need to change yourself in the way that you do things for others. And that one's called civilization versus assimilation. Yeah, kind of loaded words there, but important to talk about right here.